Hello everyone, and welcome to the Urban Legends and Folklore of Australia Iceberg. As you may have guessed, this iceberg covers various stories and rumours about ghosts and strange creatures and odd places, and also more general folklore. I sorted things by what I consider to be the most well known down to the least known. Some of these legends and folklore are going to be dark, and some of them are going to be a little bit lighter. With that all out of the way, let's get into the first layer. A lot of blood, sweat and tears went into building the Sydney Harbour Bridge, some think so literally. It's alleged that some poor workers fell into the pylons as they were being cemented and were simply left there to become part of the bridge. And why were they cemented into the pylons? Because it'd be too costly to retrieve their bodies. At least 16 people really did die during the bridge's construction, although this figure doesn't include the bodies of those who are meant to be a part of the structure itself. Drop bears are a vicious koala-like or bear-like animal that jumps out of trees and attacks anyone unfortunate enough to be on the ground below. Many people say they're fake and just an urban legend told to mess with tourists or part of an old Bundaberg campaign, but those people might be wrong. If such a respected institute as the Australian Museum can discuss them on their website, then surely they must exist. There are stories about non-native big cats all over Australia. I've covered the Blue Mountains panther in an old video on my channel, but there's also whispers of them in the Grampians in Victoria and even Alice Springs. These big cats are speculated to be anything from escaped zoo and circus animals to World War II army mascots that were released into the wild, and others still think they could be surviving ancient big cats from Australia's distant past. Many say that the big cat sightings are just feral cats, but they're pretty big ones. A photo of a man wearing a creepy outfit has circulated the internet for years, and it's been linked to the 1979 Luna Park ghost train fire. 7 people died in the fire, and it's rumoured that this demonic looking figure caused the blaze. Whether or not this demon had anything to do with it, there's a lot of sketchy activity associated with the fire. A lot of people believe it was deliberately lit as part of some sort of criminal conspiracy. The Yowie is like Australia's Bigfoot and is perhaps the most famous legendary creature in all of Australia. It's a giant hairy man that wanders through the bush and the outback. It has its roots in Indigenous folklore and is mainly confined to the east coast of Australia, but different areas offer different descriptions of the Yowie's behaviour. Some are said to be shy and avoid people, while others are much more aggressive and attack anyone that crosses their path. Pine Gap in Australia is much like America's Area 51. Located near Alice Springs in the Northern Territory, Pine Gap is jointly run by the Australian government and the CIA, the NSA, and other American organisations. It's said to be mainly used for surveillance, but rumours have persisted that Pine Gap is also hiding aliens alongside experimental and dangerous military equipment. Beneath Sydney's St James Station is a tunnel system that spans across the city, along with a giant underground lake and a variety of weird water creatures, including an albino eel. Unlike many legends, this one is at least partially true. The tunnels and lake really do exist and have been documented by officials and urban explorers, and though the massive eel may not be down there, there's still a lot of life lurking in the dark. Like the Yowie, Bunyips have their roots in Indigenous folklore. They're a water-based creature found in different lakes and billabongs and watering holes across the country, and are said to have a long neck and move through the water with fins. Some stories about Bunyips say they target young children who get too close to their territory. Others believe that such stories were created by Indigenous parents to teach their children to stay safe around waterways. The Crown Casino in Melbourne is one of Australia's most popular casinos and attracts a steady amount of punters every year. It's frequented by so many people then inevitably some will drink themselves to death or otherwise die on the grounds. And to avoid disturbing other patrons, the casino will discreetly take their bodies to a morgue. The morgue can apparently be accessed through the casino's toilet stalls, as one is always out of order to deter anyone from investigating. You may recognise Shinrikyo as the fanatical group who carried out the sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system in the mid-1990s, but what you may not know is that Shinrikyo briefly had a presence in Western Australia. They were known to have tested chemical weapons and searched for uranium, and were apparently experimenting with nuclear weapons. In May 1993, locals reported seeing a bright flash of light in the sky, as well as feeling the earth shake beneath them. Scientists attributed these events to weather phenomena, but given how secretive Shinrikyo were in Australia, the nuclear weapons myth has continued to persist. Located in Sydney's Northern Beaches region, Wakehurst Parkway is an infamous stretch of road where a lot of sinister things are said to have taken place. It's been associated with murders and people's bodies have been dumped there, and it even has a connection to the Graham Thorne case of the 1960s. These events have given rise to the belief that Wakehurst Parkway is haunted. The most well-known ghost is that of a woman in white who disappears when cars try to swerve around her. And just like in many other parts of the world, there are stories of phantom hitchhikers who vanish soon after getting inside an unsuspecting motorist's car. Monte Cristo claims to be Australia's most haunted house. Located in Junee in regional New South Wales, the mansion was owned by the Crawley family, who made their fortune through the local railway station. But while the Crawleys were rich, the home was said to be a hotbed of tragedy and is allegedly haunted by several ghosts. These stories include a maid who allegedly died after falling from a balcony, an infant girl who died after being dropped down the stairs, a stable boy who perished in a fire, and a caretaker who was shot by a boy who had just seen the film Psycho. There isn't a lot of evidence to suggest many of these things actually happened. There's no articles about the stable fire or the shooting, but the Crawleys did have a granddaughter named Ethel, who died at an early age. Monte Cristo may not be haunted, but it hasn't stopped its current owners attracting tourists intrigued by its ghostly tales. It's said that the southwest Victorian coast is home to a Portuguese shipwreck made out of mahogany, and it proves that the Portuguese were the first Europeans to reach Australia. Stories of the Mahogany shipwreck date back to the mid-1800s, although details of its exact location are unknown. Some say it's in the sea itself, while other accounts claim it lies on an obscure beach or is buried underneath sand dunes. In 2003, a local man claimed to have seen an image of the Virgin Mary on a fence post at the edge of Coogee Bay in Sydney. It soon attracted the attention of both local crowds and international media. The local church and religious organisations were very non-committal on the phenomena though, and didn't rush to call it a miracle. It was thought that this image of the Virgin Mary was a trick of the light, and viewing angles made people project their own meaning into shapes that were actually random. Whether it was a trick or divine didn't matter in the end though, as the Virgin Mary fence post was destroyed by vandals only a few days after it was first discovered. Located in Perth, Western Australia, Kings Park is said to be a site where Perth's witches and other devil worshippers gather, especially during a full moon. The park is also popular with homeless people, and those who have been found dead there are said to be sacrifices carried out by the park's devil worshippers at night. Flinders Street Station is one of the grandest train stations in all of Australia, but it may actually be in the wrong place. Both Flinders Street Station and Chhatrapati Station in Mumbai were both designed by the same company in England in the late 1800s, but when it came time to ship the plans and materials for each station, they were given the wrong labels. This swap is meant to explain how Flinders Street Station looks very Indian styled, while the Mumbai station looks much more Victorian and typical of older buildings in Melbourne. The Princess Theatre is one of the oldest entertainment venues in Australia and has played host to Les Mis, Phantom of the Opera, and apparently a ghost. British-Italian Frederick Federici was an opera singer who supposedly had a heart attack after finishing his final performance in the theatre. It's even said that he was seen taking his bows on stage after he died. Since then, Federici's ghost has waltzed the halls of the Princess Theatre, dressed in formal attire. The belief in his spirit was so strong that a seat was left empty in his honour for years on the opening night of every new performance. Asylums are creepy places, and Larundel in Victoria is no different. It first opened its doors in the 1950s and closed down in the 1990s after different approaches to psychiatric care came into practice. Like any abandoned asylum, it has its share of frightening ghost stories, but perhaps none are more unsettling than the story of a little girl who died there. The girl was said to have loved her music box so much she had it by her side when she perished, and on some nights you can still hear the sounds of her music box's music echoing through the halls of Larundel. Located in Victoria's high country, the Butter Man supposedly ventures into the mountains for months at a time and is named after the buttons he makes from the antlers of deer he has hunted. The people who encounter Butter Man are often questioned by him about why they are in the area, and he's said to be great at hiding and only gets seen when he wants you to see him. The Butter Man has been sought out by police for assistance locating people who go missing in the high country, as he knows the area like nobody else, but some question whether he may in fact be responsible for those who vanish. Located in Babinda, Queensland, the Devil's Pool is said to be colder than other bodies of water in the area. 20 people have lost their lives at the pool since the 1950s, and it's said to be haunted by the spirit of an Indigenous woman. The woman was in love with a man from another tribe, but their tribes didn't get along. The two of them were captured by their tribes, but she escaped and threw herself into the pool in despair. Most of those who have died at the pool have been men, as the Indigenous woman supposedly pulls them into the pool, hoping to find her lost lover. The Poinciania woman is perhaps Darwin's most famous urban legend. There have been many variations of the legend over the years, but most seem to say that the woman was assaulted by either soldiers or fishermen, and afterwards they either hung her from a tree or she took her own life in despair. And to this day, Poinciania woman haunts the trees and targets men, and there are some who say she can be summoned like Bloody Mary. The story of the burning Airman originates from an air disaster near Canberra in 1940, which saw 10 people die. Since then, there have been reports of spirits haunting the crash site. There's a nurse who was treating victims at the scene, and a ghost of a young girl. But the most famous ghost of them all is an airman who allegedly ran from the wreckage whilst on fire and died at the scene. On some nights you can still see him running whilst ablaze, unaware that he has passed away. Though Jack the Ripper was one of the most notorious serial killers in British history, some people believe he didn't die in England, but actually fled to Australia after carrying out his crimes. 2 Australian men have been identified as candidates for the real Ripper. Melbourne man Frederick Deeming was executed for murdering a woman. He travelled the world and was thought to have been in England at the time of the murders attributed to the Ripper. The other Ripper candidate is Walter Thomas Porriett, a Brisbane man who was convicted of murdering a woman whilst he was posing as a gynecologist. The Jack the Ripper connection was supposedly made after comparing Porriett's handwriting to a letter sent to the newspapers during the Ripper's murder spree. Porriett died in the 1950s and is buried at Toowong Cemetery. The Hawkesbury River of New South Wales is said to be home to Australia's version of the Loch Ness Monster. The Hawkesbury River Monster is said to have a long neck, flippers, and grey skin. The area also has indigenous cave paintings which show a plesiosaur-like animal, which could be the origin of the legend. Others believe that sightings of the Hawkesbury River Monster are instead misidentifications of known animals such as large eels and turtles that have somehow swum inland from the sea. Sydney's foundational Big Bang dates back to when convicts were first transported to Sydney and was described in a diary entry of a surgeon aboard the Lady Penrhyn. The first convict boats to arrive were filled with men only, but the Penrhyn had women on board. The boatload of men and the boatload of women started to mingle. They got stuck into the local alcohol supply and, well, in Adelaide in the early 1900s, a Dr. Schneider allegedly lost his wife and child, and their deaths caused him to become unhinged. He carried out weird studies and experiments that required live human subjects who were tortured, and he didn't use anesthetic. Some even speculated that he may have killed his wife and child himself, and the screams of those he has tortured echo through Schneider Alley even today. Stories of Schneider's actions have been heavily disputed by his descendants. He really was a doctor and did have 2 children who passed away, but they were both adults when they died. The Lismore glowing cross once sat atop the grave of William Steenson, a man who had been killed in the 1800s while trying to stop a runaway train. It's said that a local man was the first to see the cross glow in the 1970s, and it's left people puzzled ever since. Soon after its discovery, it was examined by geologists, stonemasons, and others who theorized that the granite in the cross gave it its glowing properties. Naturally, others believed that the cross was some sort of miracle. Unfortunately, today's technology won't be able to test the glowing cross, as it was stolen from Steenson's grave in the 1980s and has never been seen again. Melbourne is one of the most livable cities in the world, but the one thing it does lack is a train station at its main airport. If you believe the rumours though, there is in fact a secret train station underneath Tullamarine Airport that isn't open to the public and can be used to access secret locations around Melbourne. Airport and railway workers deny its existence, but of course they would. The secret airport station may be disputed, but there are other train stations in Melbourne which are known to have unused platforms and tracks. The Altona Homestead Catman is the name given to a spirit who supposedly haunts a home in Altona, Victoria. The ghost is said to be of a homeless man who loved to fish and would hold on to his catches far longer than normal, and naturally attracted the attention of local stray cats. Supposedly, people who stay at Altona report an eerie presence, and if you sit on the homestead's toilet, you might feel a ghostly cat rubbing up against your legs. Located beneath La Trobe University's Bundoora campus is a nuclear fallout bunker, at least according to legend. The bunker was supposedly built to accommodate teachers only and no students, and is also said to be useful if students ever lead mass protests against staff. While the nuclear bunker itself rests in the realm of urban legend, there are tunnels underneath La Trobe University. Who knows where they might lead? In the late 1800s, a 10-metre long amphibian-like creature with a face like a bulldog was spotted in Euroa in Victoria, and it threatened the locals who encountered it. The townsfolk gathered in a 40-strong posse and tried to hunt the beast with a net, but were unable to catch anything. All they found were some tracks, which were quickly lost to time. The Port Stephens megalodon was a giant shark allegedly spotted in Port Stephens in the early 1900s. Local fishermen began noticing something eating their crayfish pots whole, and after some alleged sightings of the creature, they refused to fish in the area. The beast allegedly agitated the water as it swam past boats, and was said to be nearly 100 meters long. It's possible that something unusual was happening in Port Stephens, but whether or not it was truly a megalodon seems questionable. Many of the accounts of the creature were made by Greek fishermen who spoke little English, and the exact details of what they saw may have been lost in translation. The kangaroo is such an elusive and unknown creature that it has only ever been spotted in the bushland of New South Wales. Not much is known about this alleged creature, but it's said to look like a wallaby. The main difference though is that the kangaroo roams around on all fours, like a cat. It's thought that the kangaroo, if it exists, could be an example of divergent evolution in the Australian outback. In the early 1900s, there was an amusement park on Tullamarine Beach in Sydney, and an elephant named Princess Alice was one of its star attractions. People could pay to ride on top of Alice, and she even travelled around the country, attracting enthusiastic onlookers wherever she went. Alice did live to a ripe old age, and after her death rumours persisted that she wasn't buried in a conventional grave, but instead lies underneath the sands of Tullamarine Beach. If you go there with a shovel today, you might just find her remains, if you dig long and hard enough. The story of the Botany Bay giant dates back to the late 1700s. This immense man stood 3 meters tall and was captured by sailors who took him back to England. It's said the giant was painted red, but actually had yellow skin. The giant was supposedly put on display as a curiosity in England and was witnessed by thousands of people. He was kept in chains and acted aggressively, but was on good terms with its keeper. You can find a written account of the Botany Bay giant in the State Library of New South Wales, a strange story from Australia's past. Located on the flat plains of regional New South Wales, One Tree Hotel was built in 1862 and is far away from people. The hotel operated for 80 years before shutting its doors, and today sits abandoned, decaying in the outback sun. Despite its isolation, there are stories abound about a giant light that can be seen above the pub as travellers get closer, only to see it vanish once they reach it. Some speculate that the light could be of its former owner, who died in the 1800s and was known to venture out into the night with a lantern to make sure that there weren't any freeloading horse-drawn carriages. Some people believe that the light at One Tree Hotel could actually be some kind of mirage, although a scientific examination of the phenomenon is yet to be carried out. And that is the end of the Iceberg. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it if you made it this far. If you enjoyed this video, then you may also like my video about the unsolved mysteries of Australia Iceberg. Take care everybody.